Here I am again. I promise you it's the last time I make a presentation. It's late enough, Friday afternoon. I know some of you have travel arrangements anyway, so don't worry. It's fine. We know that. I promised yesterday you will get a preview of all those answers we have already defined on your questions from last year. So this is the moment. I'm going to do that right now. I don't know if you have ever heard. I know I have a lot of French-speaking colleagues here among yourself, and so I don't know if you've ever heard of a person called Jacques Prévert, who was writing songs and poems, and one is very famous. It's called Inventaire. So in English, it means listing. Jacques Prévert was someone quite funny, and I was told at least that he was trying to confuse people with a list of things which have nothing in common. I assure you, this presentation is nothing of the such. I am not trying to confuse you. Nevertheless, most of the points I'm going to highlight and to show, the questions I will have, they are not related to each other in a kind of particular way. So don't try to find out why one question is coming after the previous one. This is not the intent at all. So let's go. Just a reminder of yesterday, the number of questions we have received, and the light blue part of the depiction you have here is what we are going to have a look at. So half of it are in this file. I'm trying to go, let's say, over those questions and answer in a painless way, without going into too many details, for one very good reason. I am not the one who wrote down those answers. I am just giving you an overview of what has been written down. I'm going to read that through, but I am not expert for those topics. So I know a couple of them. I can perhaps elaborate a bit on a couple of those, but for most of those, it's going to be just like the way it's written down. So there will be later this year on the EASA website a communication which will then take all those questions and more with the answers, and we will send on top of that a dedicated message to all of you DOA holders so that you are aware that the website has been updated. So I got the message, thank you very much, but the website is not always, let's say, the most convenient way to get to be made aware of something new. So we are going to send you an additional message. And we have set ourselves the target date of September of this year to complete this activity. So you can see the two guys on the side of this slide. One stands for the question and the other one stands for the answer. They are on each slide, so I think it's quite intuitive. So we have several topics which are not in a kind of hierarchy or any kind of group. So just wanted to put it like that. Going very quickly through all of those. Level of involvement, of course. Avionics mandate, you remember the questions and the presentation was last year. International cooperation, OSD, so written here completely. We always say OSD, but to be honest, sometimes it's difficult to remember what it stands for if you're not using it regularly. So for me, it's okay now, but it took some time. So operational suitability data, Ceplac, continued airworthiness, lithium battery, EASA processes, additive manufacturing. So here we go. First question. Does the EASA have a group or a team who can work to develop the processes to qualify additive manufacturing parts? Yes, and we have a CM, a cert memo, and you see here the reference, CM-S-008. So in its appendix 1, you will find a list of technical panel related contact points. So if you have questions, please refer to this document. You will find who to contact. Isn't there a difference between monolithic materials versus sandwich composite materials? The answer is in the question, I would say, but I think that my colleague there felt compelled to start his answer with, of course, yes, there is a difference. So the point is that different manufacturing processes are there, of course, but we consider it from its layer by layer build-up manufacturing process. So in both cases, we are talking about additive manufacturing process, but this is the main intent of the consideration, which is there. For both composites, we have clear interfaces between one and the next layers. So the layers boundaries are different in both cases, but there are always layers. And there is a strong difference in shear force capabilities. So that's exactly what it's all about, shear force. Do you consider rapid prototyping as additive manufacturing? So rapid prototyping is additive manufacturing, that's true. But I must say, as it is written here in the answer, this was the beginnings of all that. So, as it's written there, initially there was no concern on the statistical material properties. It's called prototyping. You are not talking here about numerous products you are producing. For serial parts production, however, of course, and also going from non-loaded to critical loaded parts, we have, of course, to think a bit more about what are the implications of this technology. ADSB out, so Avionics mandate. Oh, I'm sorry, there is a bad typo there. There are rumors saying that ADSB out mandate could be postponed to 2025. Oh, I love gossip. So what can we say about it? There is quite a long answer there, but the answer is no. It's not going to be postponed. What we have here is that there was no proposal to change the basic date for the carriage of Mod S and ADSB equipment with European airspace as of the 7th of June 2020, which is actually the date to be considered. And as such, this compliance date is in force and applicable. Of course, there are talks about how to cope with that, but no, for the moment, there is nothing in that direction. How can we identify the operational capability of the installed system so that the operator can get the ops spec amended with the capability? So identify RNP or PBN, so performance-based navigation, documentation. The IFM supplement proposed by the STC holder, or the IFM proposed by the TC holder, should normally contain statements addressing the navigation operational capabilities demonstrated during the airworthiness approval. So it sounds like a little bit cryptic this way, but the last line is really important. The FAA AC 20-138D Change 2 Appendix 5 provides examples. So I've just copy-pasted a part of it. It's actually not as bad as it sounds. Just have a look into this document. You will see very clearly what to do in which case. Oh, I love this one. Long question, short answer. Regarding EASA TREF 6, is additive manufacturing still considered as new technology? So I don't want to go a little bit further and develop that question, but obviously, yes, it is. So for the moment, this is the situation. This is still too new to be considered as something we feel completely comfortable with, and we still consider it new technology. So, again, TREF 6, classifying a change as minor or major. Whose classification is this? Certifying authority or validating authority? Because the classification procedures might not be 100% identical. The TREF 6 is absolutely clear on that. This is the certifying authority responsibility, and it must, it should or not, we are friends or whatever, we must accept the validating, we must accept the certifying authority classification as we are in the role of validating authority, and it's the same in the other side. So when we are certifying authority, we are the only one stating the classification. So that being said, the applicant shall make a proposal for the classification according to the regulatory framework for its design organization. So here you are the reference for European organization being part 21. So it doesn't mean that we are not looking at all into what is being done on the other side, but this is not being done on a project basis. This is something we are doing on a yearly basis, and we are collecting then the cases where we think we could have done it better or we could have done it differently, and we talk about it afterwards. But the TIP-Rev 6 is very clear on that. If the change to STC is basic and does not require a change by a certification authority to the STC, excuse me, how does the operator or the KMO know the change is directly accepted? This is indeed a question we hear from time to time. So in case of a basic major change, the certification authority will update the STC, and there is no case for which a major change will not lead to a modification of the STC. However, if the aircraft manufacturer is a certificate holder, basic major changes are not issued by the validating authority. So take the case of Airbus. A basic major change will not be issued by the FAA, and take the case of Boeing, a basic major change will not be issued by EASA. So the validation authority approval of the change indicating that there is no change to the TCT-CDS makes it acceptable to the certification authority. If a non-TC holder is defining a basic major change to an STC, a new certificate will always be issued in the frame of a streamlined validation process. So we mentioned that yesterday, the streamlined validation process, which is limited to a few days to be performed. So I get the feeling this question was more or less touched yesterday. Can a US manufacturing organization use a EASA minor change as a means to apply to the FAA for a request for conformity and permit release of parts on a 8130-3 form? So this is something that's moving right now. The FAA has launched an exemption process for extending the scope of approval of manufacturing organization to the production of design approved by EASA only. So there will be some news in the future about it, but we cannot say more. Oh, a good one. We are usually talking about technical things, organizations, requirements. Here it's about money. Are there FAA fees to pay for the STC validation? The answer is no. No fees to be charged by the FAA in case of STC validation. The FAA has other constraints than EASA, but it means that there is a different way of funding this organization. How to keep contact with POA organization? Oh, that's a very good one. What is expected from the DOA on top of providing mail address and establishing a DO-PO agreement? The DOA is expected to be in contact with the POA. The POA is producing parts for the STC in case of multiple installations, obviously. So, for example, here we are talking about metallic or composite structure for antenna installations. So it's obvious that the POA must inform the DOA in case of quality escapes, for example, while the DOA must keep the POA informed if approved productions drawing are changed. So if there is only one installation, obviously the situation is different from having a series of products being processed by the POA organization. So the KMO has to evaluate the cumulative effect of many modifications. This is acknowledged. Does the DOA have to therefore provide the KMO with safety assessment data? So this answer is a little bit more complicated. I won't elaborate on that. I will just read that. The determination of a cumulative effect must be made within the justification of flight safety that is based upon the specific configuration. With that in mind, the KMO will not evaluate the combined effect, but rather assess conformity to the approved condition. So here, the key word is conformity. Please don't forget that. The applicant for flight conditions approval, for example, might be asked to provide a safety assessment to the approving organization. And when an STC is installed, the installer is obliged, so is mandated to determine possible incompatibilities of the intended installation with other design that may already be installed. So in such case, the KMO might indeed be in need to contact the DOA to get further advice or need approved changes to the installations and instructions. So you see, this particular question is opening a wide field of possibilities. Keep a good communication between the DOA and the KMO, and you should be able to deal with all those issues. Continue the worthiness again. When did the community get information about the reported errors? Without a summary of the reports, we will not have any positive impacts to our design. Well, that's quite a strong statement. So the answer is the following. This is about the benefit of errors to reporting organizations, for example, when findings are made that affect multiple products and are independent from an individual occurrence, for which the reporting organization will receive feedback automatically. Okay, I know that this is a bit cryptic, but have a look at the next bullet. Conclusions of that become visible to all, so this is the answer, when EASA issues safety information bulletins. So, meaning that we don't see the added value in publishing everything systematically that we receive in IRs. We need to process it. We see that we have a job to do there. And when we have processed all of those reports, and I can tell you, there are numerous, and you can, I mean, numerous, we are talking about thousands. We are not talking about 10, 20. Yeah? We are talking about a lot. If we would publish that, you wouldn't get the overview. So we are publishing after sorting out, processing, consolidating, getting advice from experts, those safety information bulletins. Can you use a microphone, please, Mr. Clementi?
Would it be possible to step into your presentation, or would you like to avoid that? Or should we do that by Slido?
It will be better to do that by Slido if it's possible, but now that you have the microphone open, please ask your question. But I would be grateful if you could put it in Slido afterwards. Thank you.
The point is, the smaller DOEs have no possibility to get such amount of occurrence reports as a big one. So if you are waiting until the big ones coming up with a service information bulletin or something, we are producing furthermore. And for my opinion, it would be very helpful to get even a statistic where are the problems are located, what is identified as a problem area. It's not necessarily to have the screw, the bolts, the unit mentioned, but to at least to see where is the trend, where are the peaks. Is this on the installation? Is this on the material? Is this on the electric? Where is the problem? So that we do have any chance to react quickly.
Thank you. So some of you be aware that we have changed the EASA organization a couple of times in the past years. One of the changes in the last years was the creation of a department for safety analysis, safety data analysis. We call it, with full of love here, SM. So This is the official name. I cannot do anything about it. So this group of people is analyzing, assessing all the data we receive, being it from IRs, but we get accident investigation reports, we get several statistics. We are in contact with a lot of organizations around the world. So what you are asking for is actually to process indeed the data we receive with showing actually the most important points where there is trouble. So I will forward your comment to them anyway, for sure. But this is the idea. We are not publishing everything. We are trying to publish things which are actually showing particular concerns we believe need to be made public. I don't think this has anything to do with having a large, I would say, a key player in the aviation community or not. I believe that's the importance of the concern, which is leading to the publication of a SIB. So typically we can think about lithium batteries. Everyone's impacted, from, of course, the large aircraft manufacturer up to down to the small organizations which are who are installing ALTs. This is something that's not really related to the size of the organization impacted. So I will capture your question and forward it to our colleagues, who will then make a proper answer to that. But I am quite sure I can tell on their behalf the concern is really in the focus, not who is mentioning that. Thank you. So, processes. What are the EASA minimum prerequisites for DOAs to process and approve minor design changes? Well, I was a little bit perplexed when I saw this question. Let me just read what is there. So in order to be able to process and approve minor changes to the type design, the design organization must have at least the privileges referenced here from part 21 in its terms of approval. I'm sorry for the acronym. So it states TOA stands for terms of approval. It is fundamental that the aforementioned privilege are associated to the scope area concerned by the minor change. So then I understood actually what it was all about. It's not about the fact that you are able to perform minor changes. If you are DOA, it's clear that you are able to do that, but it's about the scope for which you have those privileges. You have to be very careful about it. An easy one. Where can we find proper Form 20 and Form 80? 20 permit to fly and 18 flight conditions. Where can we find those templates? Well, there are two answers to that. On our website and in your own documentation system. I just explained that. So the Form 18B is a form which is actually for those organizations not having the privilege to approve internally the flight conditions approval. So Form 18B is therefore on our website. The Form 18A is for those organizations having the privilege to approve internally the flight conditions approval. So this is just, you take the same form, you call it differently, and it is in your own design assurance system, and you have it. The Form 20A is a form which is provided by the respective National Aviation Authority, so it's not EASA. And the Form 20B has to be created by the design organization, for similar reason than the Form 18, as I mentioned. It's a matter of privileges. If a piece of equipment similar to the G5 Garmin electronic flight instrument is requested to be installed, how should the approval process be initiated? So, I would say that for this one, it's better to go directly to what's mentioned, to refer to the FAQ table on our website for design change classification. So be aware this is just for general aviation, but I think that the question is anyway general aviation one. There you will find guidelines to classify an avionic design change as minor or major. Just a small capture of what you will find there with clear cases which are then clearly classified either minor or major. In the second column from the left, you will find a classification. As you can see, this is not a new document. You can compare the EASA logo on the document and the one on the presentation. There was quite an evolution between. Okay. When a TC holder refuses to share the pre-mod approval data, and we own the design and certification data, could we apply for an EASA STC once the aircraft is with the operator? So the answer is clear. The ownership of the aircraft is not directly impacted. The considerations whether an individual aircraft can or cannot be modified for an EASA change. I believe there was a question just before in the presentation about the ETSO considerations. EASA is about safety, environmental considerations, but we cannot help you when you are facing commercial issues. So as I would say a statement which is related to it, if you talk about safety, the commercial considerations are not related, and this is exactly what this question is trying to do, but this is not possible. So the fact that the design organization must assess the interfaces of their change with the pre-mod configuration as applicable applies in general. So in some cases, there is no alternative to a commercial agreement with the TC holder. We are talking about intellectual property there, so this is not exactly in the remit of EASA. Oh, a good one. When is it scheduled to have a CM, so a certification memorandum, replacing the CRE for oxygen systems? For those who know about it, that's very good. For those who do not know, I invite you to have a look at our website. There is no target date for this action, and EASA reviews the certification memorandum priorities at regular intervals and published a list of all released and all planned certification memorandums. So this list is available. I'll check that myself. And you will find on it the status, which is the last column on the right, which is telling whether it's under development, whether it has been already published, or if it was even withdrawn or cancelled. Very interesting document. Lithium battery. Well, my colleague Maite Iniguez has left, but here we have this question. What is the EASA position on lithium batteries installed as loose parts? So we all know this is really something that has caused us a couple of headaches very regularly. So, for example, lithium batteries installed in portable IFE with multiple cells with less than 100 watts hour. Well, the answer is that loose parts are addressed by the SIB referenced here, so 2016/08. In this SIB, the agency reminds operator, and whoever is reading that, of the need to obtain from their competent authority an authorization when the limits are exceeded. So this means you need to know the limits. To know the limits, read the SAB further and you will find actually guidelines for that. Why does the current special conditions CRE for non-rechargeable batteries not explicitly state that it will be applicable to batteries which were qualified to the ETSO C142 standards? So in this case, there is a twofold answer, if I remember it correctly. So the previous means of compliance was mentioning C142A in combination with a risk assessment at aircraft level. And this was acceptable. However, the current means of compliance, so what is actually mentioned in the presentation, in the question, I'm sorry, it states that minimum operational performance standards, so MOPS, sounds much better when I say MOPS. So the MOPS for non-rechargeable lithium batteries mentioned DO227A plus a risk assessment at aircraft level. I don't read the brackets. And this is acceptable. So what it comes down to is that the ETSO C142B is referring to DO227A, and it's going to be published later this year. So you will find again the the ETSO C142 referenced through this DO or a standard, but you will need to be a bit patient. How will the agency notify the acceptance of the certification basis? Oh, this is something for the PCM, so here I am. It could be made in different ways. So to answer the question, there is not only one way of doing so. For the moment, in the future, we will probably be able to do all that using Ceplac, and to be perhaps a little bit more harmonized in the ways of doing so. So we have actually, for the moment, the possibility to use any way that is traceable. So emails, formal letters. If we are dealing with a very big project, we might even have a certification review item or certification action item. Well, so I just leave it like that, but with the new Part 21, with Ceplac, we might reduce a bit the scope of this answer in the future. So I see you're still awake. I'm really surprised. I'm very glad, so thank you and congratulations. It's 3 o'clock. We have almost done that, so let's go for the rest. Is there a maximum time frame considered for EASA to accept a certification program, and further for the acceptance or adjustment to the LOI proposed by the DOA? No, I'm sorry, there is no maximum time frame. Of course, we are committed to reduce it as much as possible, and we strive to review documents within 4 weeks, which we have mentioned already at least twice during this particular workshop. So there is a very small line, you know, I did it on purpose so that you cannot read it. So don't look at that. It's mentioning the code of good administrative practice. And this is mentioning this particular thing. But don't have too many hopes. You cannot make it mandatory for us to be done in 4 weeks using this reference. So it's just for your information. We try to get better. It was the first slide of my presentation this morning, so don't forget about it. So is it not possible to consider the number of compliance demonstration items, so the so-called CDIs, as a criterion before starting with LOI? So I think the rest is perhaps more explicit. So for instance, if we have less than 20 CDIs, should the CDI list be defined and sent to EASA, or should we just forget about CDIs? No, you cannot forget about CDIs. This is absolutely mandatory to define CDIs as soon as the Part 21 is then in force, and that everyone has to follow the process with the new LOI concept. But that being said, no one says the number of CDIs has to be high. You can have a very small number of CDIs. So it means that this is up to you. But keep in mind that what is not written here on the slide is that the highest criticality level that you will find on any part of your project will apply to the CDI it is within. So meaning that if you have 2 CDIs, which are covering like 2,000 documents, and one of the documents is more critical than the others, the whole CDI will adopt this particular level of criticality. So for more details, please come back to the presentations which were made in the past about the LOI concept. You will have probably other presentations in the near future about LOI concept. At least I'm sure that we have some on our YouTube channel for the STC workshop. So please go back to that. How will the privilege of submitting compliance documents without further involvement be modified by the LOI process? So there is a particular point, 21A263B, which will be cancelled by the next amendment to Part 21, the one which was recently adopted by the Commission. So according to the new concept, any application for major change or major repair for STC, APU, ETSO or TC submitted to the agency should be complemented by a risk assessment and a LOI proposal. After acceptance of the third program and the LOI contained into that, data and activities not included in the EASA LOI will be accepted without further verification. So, of course, the point here is about the involvement level. So we need to check the proposal, and we might accept to not be involved afterwards, but we still need the third program and we still need a proposal for LOI. Regarding the test, is it possible to submit only the plans and to have the report validated by the CVE without EASA checking if the tests are passed? So you show us, if I understand the question correctly, only the cases where you fail, where everything is going wrong. Well, that's not the idea actually. The test reports should be submitted to the agency if they have been retained by our experts in the EASA LOI frame. So if we say we want to see them, please give them to us. Even if they are particularly good. We are happy to see good documents. So nevertheless, it must be noted that the Part 21 will contain a new provision that will require the applicants to inform the agency in case of unexpected difficulties. Yeah, that's exactly the other case. We did not require the documents, and you find out, oh, there is a problem here. What do we do? Before you find out what you do, you please inform us. And this is here in case of significant failure or finding that will be then shown by the test. So here you have the reference to Part 21, which are making it mandatory. The LOI risk analysis is a transfer of the agency workload. Could the applicants expect to have a reduction of the STC fees in the future? Oh, talking about money. Again. I would love to say yes, but this is not what is in the answer. The answer says the risk assessment to be performed in order to propose an LOI is not a transfer of agency workload, and in consequence, no reduction of STC fees is expected. Now, I think I need to explain perhaps a bit further this one. This is not a transfer of agency workload, it's a transfer of your workload. But we are transferring not from one organization to the next, we are transferring from a time point, a point in time, to another point in time. So we consider, and it has been confirmed to my point of view by the pilot projects, that defining the LOI is of course a burden. Proposing this LOI early in the project. However, it has reduced the burden afterwards. It has reduced the workload afterwards during the project, because the communication is very clear, is very structured, is very standardized at the beginning of the project. You have less surprises afterwards, and you have actually a better way of dealing with the involvement of experts. So this is actually a transfer of workload from the future to the present. So I'm sorry, but there is no money for that. So we are not giving you money for performing your job earlier. Has the LOI definition for an STC a direct impact on the STC fees? No. the new LOI concept has no impact on the fees. So this is a very generic question and a very generic answer. Is the overall DOA performance indicator based on feedback of DOA team leader and PCM? Panel feedback per panel or on average? So how does it work with a DOA performance indicator? So there was a short explanation this morning. There were a lot of very good presentations detailing that. What I just want to highlight very quickly is that the performance at panel level is of course taken into account. We get feedback from the experts after each project. The PCM is giving his own feedback on top of that, and the DOA team leader will of course have their own inputs to give. So the DOA team leader feedback can also be considered for performance at panel level because we are considering in very detailed way what is being done. But the agency is currently working on an evolution of the DOA performance system. We have received a tremendous lot of feedback from you, from your colleagues, from others, from DOA team leaders about this performance system we are currently using. As I mentioned, it was defined almost 10 years ago. So it's about time that there is a change and everyone is agreeing upon that, and well, hopefully we'll get soon news about that. What is the minimum amount of DOA holder performance to not be always at the bottom of the scale in the matrix? So how to come up into the class of the DOAs, how to get better? Well, actually, I don't want to repeat what has been said before, but please consider that there are two cases. The first one is that you are a DOA, which is existing for already quite number of years. So you focus on the three areas, which are the three first bullets. Or if you are newly established, or you have a very low number of applications, it is considered that your performance is unknown and or low, depending on the decisions of the DOA team leader. So this is actually the two main cases. Do we have to document the justification of the LOI selection and to submit it with a certification program to EASA as a supporting document? So I think that here this is again in the frame of the new LOI concept. So we are talking about the new LOI concept here, keep that in mind. So the applicant is requested to provide a proposal for the risk assessment of all the CDIs as part of the third program. And a justification should be submitted for whatever is not obvious. So we are flexible. We have seen a lot of different concepts for that. So we are leaving the DOA the freedom to select the most adequate physical structure for the document to be provided for that. OSD. That's why it's starting with the O, you know, it's giving really a good feeling when you're saying it. So OSD, operational suitability data. Can something that is somehow called nice to have OSD change be classified as major? If yes, do you have an example? So the nice to have OSD changes can be referred to as a standalone change. I think it's perhaps less explicit, but it's probably the one expression I would use in front of my boss. So the standalone changes need to be classified as any other changes to the type certificate as a part of the certification process, of course. So look at the guidance provided in part 21, the guidance material to 21A91. You might discover a paragraph 3.5 which is providing a lot of details about classification criteria for OSD. How should an STC holder handle TC holder MMEL rework to remove TGL26 and in brackets quoting marks as required by a regulation impacting the SMMEL? So the items covered in the TC holder, so type certificate holder MMEL, reflect the configuration installed on the aircraft by the type certificate holder. Of course, it might be updated through revisions process, you all know that. So in particular, to retain the level of relief on some items previously indicated as required by regulations on the GAA EASA MMELs, the TC holders have updated their OSD MMEL. So, complementing that, the guidance material to the ORO requirement regulation, you will find reference there, indicates the operators are allowed to use the CSMMEL guidance only if no OSD MMEL exists for the aircraft type. So, should this level of relief not be applicable to the STC application applied for approval to EASA after the entry into force of the OSD, which was on December 19, 2016, the STC holder should address the necessary changes to the OSD MMEL through a supplement creation or update. You will see the presentation online afterwards. You will be able to view the presentation on YouTube afterwards. So I know it's a lot of words. If you are not particularly familiar with OSD, it might sound like another language. I don't want to cite any examples. I see that we have a lot of people from several countries here. I don't want to offend anyone. So let's go to the next presentation. Ceplac. Will Ceplac include provisions to deal with documents on the US export control regulations? Yes, we had a nice presentation about it yesterday. So, in a few words, EAR, ITAR are actually systems which are supported by the use of Ceplac. So you can put the documents which are export control referenced into Ceplac. But please no, not in emails. What was actually the message yesterday. Another Ceplac question. For applicants, it's difficult to see which documents have been uploaded, reviewed or validated by the PCM or the EASA panels. So Ceplac is a good idea but needs improvement. Oh yes, it needs improvement. I absolutely agree with that. But considering this particular case, there is a solution. It's called the alerting systems. So I agree, it might not be always very intuitive which alert is more suitable to your need, but this is a little bit the problem that you have when you can actually put settings into a feature. So you can either have a document which is going to be changed and you will be told about that, or you will just have an alert about, generally speaking, something has changed in the project, or you can change the frequency when you will get the alerts. So each time you put an additional layer of settings into a feature, it's getting more complicated and less intuitive. So the decision was made there to have Ceplac offering you different level of alerting so that it's the most suitable to your needs. The problem is, of course, there is a drawback here about the easiness of use and setting what you need in there. So I won't read it into details, but further releases will come, introducing new features, so additional level of complexity for some things, but which needs that it has all a goal, meeting your needs. And if you learn to work a bit with Ceplac on a regular basis, you will find out it's not so complicated after all. It's just a matter of getting your head around what is this feature for, how can I get it in a way that it's really informative for me and not sending a lot of emails, for example. and that's really something that you should try to play with a bit. Who's responsible for closing the project in Ceplac? So technically, it is not being done by the PCM. The PCM is making the decision to close it, but it will be done by our colleagues in the back office. We have a Ceplac team for that. So, you survived it. I'm very proud of you. Thank you very much. No one's sleeping. That's really more than what I could expect. So, this presentation was about your inputs. This is what we need to get better. So you fuel our improvement efforts with your questions. Thank you very much for that. Remember that I will send you, so we will close the Slido after this last presentation from Carla Iorio. But you still have, after this event, the survey that is coming next week, so that you can tell us what you thought about the STC workshop, what you would like for the next. And we have different channels of communication you can use all year round. So please use them. Let us know if you want to change something, if you have difficulties. We are here for you. So thank you very much for that. I see we have perhaps 5 minutes for the 2 questions here. Can you read them? Okay, the first one was from Mr. Clementi, so I answered that already.
The rotorcraft table has been updated to frequent revisions, and general aviation FAQ table has not been updated. Are there any plans to update?
We will forward this question to our colleagues of general aviation. I cannot answer to that right now.
And then DOA performance experience shows that the PCM statement of satisfaction may be based on subjective judgment and personal practices different from other PCM practices. How DOA can improve then? Okay, so there is a side to me you need to know. I'm an optimistic person. So I'm dealing with a lot of negative things, and I'm trying always to find out the good thing about it. So, Mr. Sepo, what I understand is that at EASA there are a lot of human beings. That's wonderful. We are not robots. We're not just putting crosses into boxes. We don't have just checklist and that's it. No, we are human beings indeed, and we are trying to do our best to harmonize with each other, to standardize our ways of working, but indeed it is not always easy to understand how the assessment has been done after each project for the same organization by different teams. So how is it possible to improve? I would say that statistically speaking, if you are getting better at all your projects, even if you have one case where it is questionable or in terms of assessment, why you did not get the best marks everywhere by your team while the next one was giving you the best marks everywhere, statistically speaking, you should actually improve. I'm not sure I answered your question. Do you have a microphone? Yeah.
Yes, partially, I would say yes, because indeed, when we have different assessments, it will affect the dashboard behind, and the dashboard is the basis for having the capabilities to make the LOI. So with different feedback from project team, behind it's difficult to say at the end what we can do to have the right things to be provided to the project team at the EASA, because different view, different practices for the team. So it's very difficult to find the right solution for us. And it means behind that we have to adapt our practices. And it's always changes the organization because of having human beings in front of us. It's very difficult from time.
Well, I understand that, but there is no alternative to having human beings at EASA. We have not planned to replace anyone with robots. So the only thing we can do is to remind what I said earlier is lessons learned. Please try to identify what has happened, why in a particular case you did not get the best marks everywhere, and try to talk about it with either the DOA team leader or whoever you consider is appropriate to talk about it. Because if I understand it correctly, your goal is to progress, to have perhaps additional privileges, to extend your scope. So this is something where the DOA team leader can be very helpful. And if you have a particular case with a project that did not went as expected, so keep it as lessons learned, and you can talk with your DOA team leader how to implement changes which are going to have a positive impact on the overall scoreboard. But this is something that indeed is not so easy to answer. I cannot give you, and no one at EASA will be able to give you a kind of a magic solution how to get a better scoreboard just in changing something in your design organization manual. It is not as easy as that.
Thank you.
But I'm sure you make it. Thank you. So, thank you very much. 3:30.
Nicola.
Magda. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Thank you, Nicola, for your presentation. One quick question.
Absolutely.
From the underground, they reports that one of objective parameter to classify the performance of DOA is the number of the review of the compliance document asked by the agency during a process. I don't know if you can confirm this.
I cannot. So I will forward the question. Can you put that please in Slido? Thank you. I will forward it to my colleagues. I am not aware of this particular criterion, but I am not a DOA team leader, so I am not the one who can give the most detailed answers about this particular topic. I invite you, however, to participate to the workshop organized by my colleagues of the DOA section, DOA team leader section. You will find out that they have a better location for the workshop. And I don't know about the catering. I was really well surprised by the catering this year. So thank you very much for the catering team if you ever watch this presentation. Yeah. So that's all I can say about it.